Hi, thank you for joining us for our 5-minute Bible study. Today we continue in the book of Colossians. We're in chapter 1, and we're going to be looking at verse 20. When you get a chance, go ahead and look at the entire context of this, which begins in verse 15, and it comes all the way down to this verse 20. Today we're going to look at just verse 20 as we close up this hymn of Paul that Paul's writing. And it says, "And through him to reconcile all things to himself, having made peace through the blood of his cross, through him, I say, whether things on earth or things in heaven." So here's the closing of the hymn, and it's a little bit confusing, so I just want to kind of go and delve into this kind of piece by piece. There's a lot of repetition in here, so let's take a look at it. It says, "And through him," so this reconciliation thing is going to happen through Jesus. It's by Jesus and through Jesus and to Jesus and for Jesus. And so through Jesus, we're going to have reconciliation. And it says, through him to reconcile. Now notice also right after that it says, having made peace. So reconciling, making peace, it's the same concept. It's this idea of fixing a broken relationship. Our relationship with God is broken when we sin. And since all of us have sinned and none of us have been perfect, we all need reconciliation. We all need to have made peace with the Father, with God. That reconciliation, that being made right with God and our relationship with him is through Jesus. So here we see that through him we are reconciled, but it's not just we are reconciled, it says all things. And if you look at the bottom of that verse, it says things on earth and things in heaven. All things, whether they're here, whether they're there, whether they're spiritual, whether they're material, all things need reconciliation. That happened because back in Genesis chapter 3, we see that when Adam and Eve first sinned, that sin affected the entire universe, not just their relationship with God, but our relationship with God and the relationship of the entire universe with God. We also know that in the spiritual realm, there was a need for reconciliation in that there's demons and Satan, as well as angels and Michael and Gabriel. So we recognize that there's going to be different types of reconciliation. Reconciliation in the material world is going to look very different than reconciliation in the spiritual world, which is going to look very different than reconciliation with humanity. So in the physical world, we see that all creation groans waiting for Christ's return. And we also recognize that one day we're going to have our resurrected body, but we do not yet know what it will be. But we know that when he returns and we see him, that we will be like him. That's what John tells us. So we recognize that the way this reconciliation is going to happen is that it has both a past part, which is Jesus dying on the cross, and a future part, which is Jesus' return. So we're looking at that reconciliation that's coming, and it has already happened. And all things have been reconciled to Jesus, having made peace through the blood of his cross. So here we're seeing how is that reconciliation done? It's made by the blood of his cross. We recognize that the Bible tells us that the blood is the life, and that God has given us the blood for the forgiveness of sins, for the atonement of sins. That's what we learn from the Bible. So understanding the concept of what the blood is and why the blood exists. You know, God, when he created us, he could have created us in many ways. We didn't need to have blood, but God created us with blood for life. So we know that blood is life. And yet we also know that sin is death. And so how do we overcome sin, death? By blood, life. And so forever there's been sacrifices being made, whether it's in the Jewish faith or any other faith. The world, humanity knew that the life was in the blood and that the sacrifice of life needed to be made in order for that blood to cover the sin, the death that comes. And so we recognize that Jesus gave us his life, his perfect blood, so that we didn't have to keep sacrificing, but one time for all times, Jesus died on the cross for us. So that blood reconciles us to God, not just us, but all creation. All of it is reconciled to him and through him, whether things in heaven and on earth. And so that's basically the end of that hymn. It ends with this concept of Jesus reconciling us, who Jesus is, all the things that Jesus did, and now we see this reconciliation that occurs through his death. So thank you very much for joining me today for this Bible study on the verse 20. Come back and join us again tomorrow as we continue with this study in the book of Colossians. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And until then, like this video, go ahead and share it, and thank you very much for being with me. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.